So the flood, the bit that's already on the Patreon, the flood tribunal. We talked about
the gates opening.
It starts off with corruption rumours around Ray Burke, an honourable man, and George Redmond, the Dublin corpo guy. The 80-year-old builder James Gogarty starts bringing evidence in, witnessing bribes being paid to politicians. We talked about Tom Gilmartin, the developer, who comes back from England to try and get some stuff going, gets run out of town by a bunch of corrupt politicians, all culminating in Pádraig Flynn's appearance on the Late Late Show, where he slags off Gilmartin's wife, and then Gilmartin comes in and starts just ratting on everybody.
All he said, technically, was that she was sick.
Yeah,
and then it was very much a keep her name out of your mouth.
Very much so.
He's like, he shouldn't have brought her up. He's like, his wife is sick. He's sick. He's not well.
He's not well. Yeah, but it was his. All I'll say is this and no more. Like, it's literally just if you froze that for half a second to be like, just don't say anything.
Don't ever say anything. Yeah,
the country would be a different place now. Maybe.
It's like if someone ever says, I'll tell you this and I'll tell you no more, that's when you should start recording. Just take it instantly you're getting gold.
It's like when the judge tells the jury to disregard those remarks. It's like, that's the good stuff. But
hold my beer.
I'm not racist, but classic lines that lead into the real stuff. But if you want to know, so we'll play a clip of
Come back home for a moment. What are you going to do about the flood tribunal and the 50 grand, Gilmore?
Well, I want to tell you about that. I've said my piece about that. In fact, I've said too much, because you can get yourself in the High Court for undermining the tribunal. So I ain't saying no more about this, except to say just one thing, and this is all I'll say. I never asked or took money from anybody to do favours for anybody in my life.
But you know Gilmartin.
Oh, yeah.
You know Tom Gilmartin, yeah.
I haven't seen him now for some years.
I've seen.
I met him. He's a Sligo man who went to England, made a lot of money, came back, wanted to do a lot of business in Ireland. Didn't work out for him. He's not well. His wife isn't well, and he's out of sorts.
So if you want to figure out what all that was about, go buy the episode behind the paywall.
And there's loads of other stuff there as well. If you're listening to this the last few months, there's so much from Bertie. Go on.
But
that's the best.
That's the best pitch.
That's the best pitch you're going to get.
So Tom Gilmartin is up in the Mahon Tribunal, and he's putting all the boys in. He's painting the picture.
The tribunal brings all the boys to the yard.
And they're like, I can teach you, but I will have to charge. That is...
If you put 5 million quid in
his Isle of Man account, then I'll show you how to milkshake things up. He's putting everyone in. He's got Frank Dunlop, the PR man, who's the go-between, connecting developers to men like George Redmond and Liam Lawler, who are just asking for handouts to get jobs done. And the job, I suppose, we'll talk about specifically in this, because it's the one that affects Bertie, is Quarry Vale, which will become Liffey Valley. So that's the one we'll kind of focus on. But this is the standard procedure for any development built after 1991, it seems. Or 1989, maybe. But for this one, Gilmartin's talking about how... We talked about in the other episodes, he's trying to get something going in Quarry Vale, and he's just getting railroaded. And he doesn't cooperate, doesn't play ball. And suddenly, this Cork developer called Owen O'Callaghan is buying up lands 3 kilometres from where he wants to start developing a site. So if they both get going, now all of a sudden you've got big shopping complexes right beside each other. This is going to be a rival site. Gilmartin initially wants to buy O'Callaghan out, but the bank is under pressure from the bank because he's already spent a lot of money and he's not made any progress. And he can't really go to them and be like, I actually need lots more money to buy land that is now massively overvalued because this whole thing's a scam.
It's weird that you say you can't do that, because the history of what bank lenders in this country would have done,
that won't happen for another 10
around
years.
This time.
Yeah, this is AIB, old steady corrupt AIB. And when Anglo comes along, they're just like, have you heard about Sean Quinn? Do you need any cement for your projects? We got you sorted. Take as much money as you want. These guys are more like, we've lent you a lot of money to get this going, and there's no return, and now you want more money to buy land from. I'll tell you now, that's not going to happen. Like, I think
So you're saying there's a chance.
They're wise to the scheme as well. The whole, it'll come up a little bit later on, but they're sort of, they know what's happening. So when he comes in, he's like, I need to actually load more money from you.
They're in on it. They're like, oh, well, look.
Well, yeah. It's like,
pass another slip.
Yeah. It's just going around in circles. The bank lends him money to give the Fianna Fáil, it goes back into the
The
account.
newly franchised O'Callaghan's AIB.
So AIB, they're like, right, no, we're not giving any more money to buy, because it's just an endless pit, right? So what happens is they basically, Gilmartin under pressure from the banks and just in general, he enters into a deal with O'Callaghan, which leads to them sharing the site. And they write up a contract. Gilmartin is still the majority shareholder in the site, but he's now sharing it with his rival O'Callaghan. And in the contract, for whatever reason, he puts in a clause that basically says if he doesn't get the lands progressed to a certain stage by a certain date, everything goes to O'Callaghan. So unless he gets stuff rezoned,
it's a good thing then they've put that date very far in the future, where it's a very strong possibility of that happening.
it's not that far in the future. But I mean, this is simple, easy bureaucracy.
How could you possibly?
Sure, it'll take a couple of days to fill the forms out, but I can't imagine it lasting 2 or 3 years.
I shook the man's hand.
Well, 2 or 3 years later, he's failed to rezone the lands. For some reason, it's just not working, and all the site gets handed over to O'Callaghan. He loses control of it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, really, just fantastic.
I do, because Champagne Football's up there, and there's a big section of that where they Sports Direct, the Mike Ashley sports website you buy all the clothes from.
Oh yeah.
Like when they sponsored Ireland, that they'd sponsored one of our training complexes, and part of the because he was in league with Delaney, that he was like, oh yeah, what we'll do is we'll sponsor you, but we'll write it into the contract that at any point in the next year, if we're not happy with it, we get to take back all of that money.
Yeah.
And at the end of that year, they were like, yeah, we're going to take back that 8 million quid.
You've done a great job, boys, but actually it's December 24th. We're not happy.
This is cancel trial before. Lads, if we don't do it right now, it's 8.5 million.
Yeah. Well, it's you got to appreciate a good scheme. So this whole thing is,
you got to anyone who comes up with the idea of saying, right, we'll write that down.
Yeah.
And we'll all make sure that happens.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, that's Gilmartin's story anyway.
Well, yeah. I'm like, I don't trust him at all, by the way.
Just because he's a hero. Right?
No, but he's not. We've been through this in another episode, that he's clearly not a hero.
Well, this is Gilmartin's story. So the story of the Tribunal, or the politicians going to pitch in the Tribunal, is that he's bitter over. He went in, he got in over his head. It doesn't matter that he was able to do this over in London. You come back to Ireland, you play by these rules, all right? And he couldn't get stuff going here. He lost his site due to negligence, and for some reason not being able to fill out simple rezoning forms.
Yeah, his own negligence.
And
his own inability to fill out.
I mean, it's pretty clear. You fill out Form A, you fill out Form B, you pay 5 million to the Isle of Man. It's done. Bingo, bango.
That is Form B.
Oh, sorry, that's actually Form A.
That's actually Form B too. You got to do it again.
We lost the form. What do I tell you? But what Gilmartin's saying, that O'Callaghan basically ended up with the site because he played ball. And we talked in the other episodes about the whole...
Oh, he was a GA man.
Actually, that does help you progress. It does save you 2 million off the fees if you just play with GA. But we talked about Gilmartin blowing the whistle. Well, Gilmartin telling the story of going in to meet Haughey and Bertie and all these boys and being asked for the 5 million. He kind of implies that O'Callaghan got the site because he must have played ball with this sort of he's seen the offers of here's
do it. Go on, you say it. Cabal.
The whole rotten cabal.
Hey, look, he's playing cabal.
He says O'Callaghan probably got the site because he played ball with these dirty politicians. But specifically, he says that he has knowledge about O'Callaghan giving around £80,000 to one Mr. Bertie Ahern in order to get favourable tax breaks for developments in Blanchardstown Shopping Centre and at Loan's Golden Island Shopping Centre. Mm-hmm. So, again...
So he's a liar.
If you've ever walked into a shop in the last 15 years, it's because of this period of corruption. When you look around now and you're like, man, nothing ever gets built. We're really stagnating as a... It's because this was the only system and we got rid of this without having a good replacement, to be honest.
Yes, it's broken.
Yeah. But you need something else in there before you get rid of this thing. But anyway, listen, the tribunal's investigating this claim of payments, and the Dáil records reveal that there were a series of meetings between Owen O'Callaghan, Frank Dunlop, the PR go-between, and Bertie Ahern on a range of issues. And, they investigate into it. There's a lot of conflicts of interest between these three parties that aren't being reported properly. So it seems like, specifically, Frank Dunlop is on O'Callaghan's payroll and the Fianna Fáil payroll. Remember, he was a spokesperson for Fianna Fáil. So there seems to be a conflict of interest there. There's not.
Why would that be a conflict?
I don't know. People can have more than one job.
A man as a freelance contractor.
Yeah.
That the man's going to work for multiple entities.
Sure.
Ireland's a small country. A lot of these things are going to be tangentially related to other.
Dunlop's mind is like a fortress, right? He is easily capable of taking information from one client, compartmentalizing it, and then bringing other information from a separate client and never revealing.
If you want that fortress to actually get zoned.
So obviously Ahern denies it, and the tribunal says there's a handy enough solution here. All right, just shows your bank accounts from the period in question, and that will help ease all these claims. But that's where Bertie comes up with a bit of an issue. The period in question is 1987 to 1993, and wouldn't you know,
a
that was the
notoriously
one
tough time.
That tough time to open a bank account. Yeah, especially when you're Minister for Finance. So
there was too much competition. A man would need weeks to sit down and delve through the pros and cons or the benefits of even having a bank account.
He knew finance better than anyone in the country. That's how he got the job. Yeah. Remember, he had an accountancy degree from one of those schools.
Rathmines, London Borough,
a little small polytech. His preferred way of, you put money in a bank, it gets interest. That's for the birds, all right? The real way to make your money work for you is to keep it in cash in a safe, which is what he did for this period. One in his office.
But see, if you put your money into a bank account, then it's only worth whatever the value of the currency that it's in is currently at that day in the stock exchange or whatever.
Exactly.
Whereas if you leave it in cash, that's just cold, hard cash. Nothing can change that. NASDAQ. This is a pound.
Yeah, it's a fucking pound.
An English pound. Because sometimes lads just have English pounds. Don't look into why.
Wall Street, I wouldn't trust those dogs. I've seen Americans like go, no, I'll keep my money in a safe, thank you very much. So he does change his tune. When he did open an account after this period, there's a lot of money in there that doesn't fully make sense based on his wage and the fact he's going through a divorce, which is where he says a lot of his money troubles come from. But basically, if he starts off with X amount, bank account disappears for several years, then he comes back with a completely different amount, which doesn't add to what he had plus his salary minus divorce.
Inflation.
I don't think that's how inflation works. He was adding his own interest. He was keeping track of the stock markets.
He was keeping all the money in balloons.
Yeah. But the Tribunal starts looking into it, and it seems that there's evidence of sterling and dollar amounts being lodged in his account. They were coming in as like random amounts. You'd see an amount coming in for 46,342.27, but they lined up perfectly with kind of whole dollar or sterling amounts by the exchange rate on the days that they're going in. So it seems very likely that there's big dollar or sterling amounts, but he denies that they are dollar or sterling for the most part.
But is it all like the same number just changed because of the currency conversion? Like, is it say like a specific number, say like £20,000 sterling constantly? It just kind of fluctuates.
But there's no constant. There's no constant. All right, don't.
The word "con" and Bertie should never be put in the same.
The stint that he did was a stint as a fine leader of this country.
Yeah. As a single man trying to get over the heartbreak of a loveless marriage.
So there's no, in fairness, right, there is no constant pay. There's no payments that are coming in. There's just random lump sums that are coming in sporadically that they're honing in on.
Yeah. And I do get it's because it's coming from another place, it's another country, I guess. Is why, because like the idea of like a bigger red flag would be if it was like on the first Friday of every month there was like X amount that trade translates to like $20,000 or pounds from the same. Even if it was different accounts, it was like the same money coming in consistently.
Sure.
Whereas if it is just,
but even
like you look, the cause is strong. Lads who left this country during hard times, who want to give a little bit back to the old sod.
Yeah,
that's fair. Should they be taxing that? Should Bertie have to pay tax on that? Should Bertie have to declare that?
You're at a trad session in Brooklyn, all right? The fiddle, the uilleann pipe, they're all being broke out, and you're a couple of tunes in, a couple of pints in, someone breaks out a hat, you know? It gets passed around, maybe some money goes into it, maybe, you know, whatever happens, maybe the money comes back. And maybe it's sent back with the Taoiseach, all right? But I get, right, so, I mean, I suppose there's lots of questions about money coming into his bank account, or lots of questions of lump sums coming in, but I guess you're going to go for the easier targets first, because he will say any Irish punt amounts coming in, he'll just say it was like work related or salary or whatever, but there's no reason why he should be getting English sterling or dollars. There's no explanation for that.
In my mind, what I would have heard, I said at the time, it was like definitely from last month when I was looking at documentaries about it. Was it not that he was like, sure, I was spending loads of time in Manchester and lads at all.
So that comes up. We'll talk about,
because this is where this is the history of the dig-outs.
Yeah, this is where you hit all the phrases, the dig-outs, the Manchester boys, the whip-arounds, right? But at the minute, they're just looking at his accounts and like, well, where are all these amounts coming from? What's happening here? And in mid-2006, details of specific transactions that were under investigation get leaked into the press and start being questioned in the Dáil.
Well, who's leaking that?
Well,
you have to look at it. You have to look at the person.
Yeah, investigate them. You know, Leo the leak. That's the real danger to democracy. Who's leaking this information? Sure, it should be in the public knowledge anyway that the sitting Taoiseach is under investigation for corruption, but let that be settled in its due course. Bertie replies in September 2006. He says, "I'm not answering what I got from my Holy Communion money, my confirmation money, what I got for my birthday, what I got for anything else. I'm not into that."
No, it's the stuff that you got paid very recently while in your office.
I'm not. Listen, I'm a saver. I'm a thrift spend. The money that I got from a Holy Communion, the Holy Sacrament, may I remind you, a religious rite. That's my business. That's between me and the big man, Father Bishop O'Malley. So that was his first offence. That's his first. So the information leaks about the tribunals. He's like, listen, I'm not going into my birthday money.
in like great PR, bring in the church instantly. Start deflecting.
Yeah. These boys will back me up. I remember that time I went to bat for you. But that's his initial kind of deflect. This is just about, but that doesn't really do anything. So his next step is the Brian Dobson interview. So we talked about this in one of the last episodes. He, depending on how cynical you are, and we'll talk about Vincent Brown's take on it, which is quite cynical, but depending on how cynical you are, this is either Bertie coming clean, addressing the leaks to the nation, just telling the people about what's going on behind the scenes, or this could be him trying to get ahead of a lot of stuff that's coming out later on and muddy the waters with what's happening in the tribunal. Depends who you ask, but this is the interview. Yeah, we played clips of it last time. In September 2006, he talks about debts of honour. This is where he starts talking about dig-outs, whip-arounds. He talks about giving a speech in a hotel in Manchester and that people did a whip around to Sterling and get
this is the one. It was like 40 grand.
Yeah,
this is like 40 grand for. It's like, sure, Jesus, Bertie, sure, you've come all the way over. I know you weren't meant to talk, but you've gone up and you've given us half an hour of your time.
Yeah,
sure, it's only right.
You can't go home with empty pockets.
But yeah, so hold on, I'll be back in you 1 second.
No.
Do you have a hat? All right, do you have a bigger hat?
Is there
a bigger hat? Does anyone have the hat of one of the Easter Island skulls?
So, yeah, and this is where he spins the story of that he was going through a rough divorce, that his friends, unprompted, unbeknownst to him, unsolicited, they got together money to help him out. And then he tried to pay it back.
They're good lads.
Good lads. And debts of honour. He tried to pay it back. Mm-hmm. And they just wouldn't take it.
They wouldn't take it. That's their own prerogative.
Yeah. I bet they'll take it now. And then he talks about Paddy the Plaster, all that sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's the...
Yeah. Paddy. We called him Paddy, Mr. Hearn, if we could get back to the...
Well, now he gets... Because there's... Because there's two Paddies.
There's two Paddies now. Oh, there's Paddy O'Reilly and Paddy the Plasterer.
No, that's just one of those moments where you're like, I genuinely don't know. And you look back over, you're like, I don't know whether that is just a great diversion tactic.
Yeah.
Or is he just so used to talking like that where he's like, that wouldn't be the same Paddy, no, this would be Paddy the Plasterer.
I think he just slips back into good time bird.
Yeah. Because I would just let him off there.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Dobson should have been like,
or T1 interviews like one of the biggest fucking scandals, and he's just talking about Paddy the Plaster. He's like, well, how would I have buried all the money in the walls if I didn't know Paddy the Plaster?
The Michael Waltz. Now, Vincent Brown wrote a whole article kind of outlining the mistakes or contradictions in that interview. So Bertie at that point says he's cooperating fully with the tribunal. In reality, according to Vincent Brown anyway, he withheld information from the tribunal almost at every turn, even to the extent of the tribunal threatening to go into public hearings arising from his failure to cooperate with his private inquiries. Which is kind of maybe that's why the docs were leaked. I don't know who did leak the documents, but it seems like he wasn't cooperating with them at all behind the scenes. So maybe some stuff was leaked to kind of force his hand. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Brown points out that in this interview, Bertie says that he gave over all the records relating to his divorce, because that's a kind of hinge point of this argument, is that it's all just money from whip-arounds from friends because of the divorce. And he says that he gave over all the records of this divorce, but the reality is that the tribunal had gone to the high courts to see the divorce documents. They challenged it in the high courts to get the documents given to them, which was denied. But the fact that they went there means that Bertie didn't give them to them.
Yeah, which is also, just to be fair to people, that's the... Yeah, like Delaney would have went through. I don't want to constantly compare Delaney to Bertie. That's not fair to either man.
No,
but because they would have had to. His deal as well was like a divorce, and they were kind of like, oh no, we can't give you this information because that's private. And you're like, at a certain point, you do. That's why no one should get married. If you're going to be honest, you're going to stand in front of the public. You shouldn't get married.
Yeah, I mean, and I go rule it to be irrelevant, but I suppose his point is that it's again this bigger picture of him saying that he's cooperating fully with the tribunals. It's like, well, why do they need to go to the high courts to get documents that they think are relevant? But
it's also just if you didn't need to do it, as in if there was nothing legally making you go do that, you wouldn't do it.
No.
And anyone who would be like, why is he not doing it? It's like, why is he going out of his way to give people shit that he doesn't need to do in a court case?
Especially like divorce is probably stuff. But I guess this goes back.
It's just one of those things. It's like, we're going to paint I don't want to say a bad picture. We're going to paint a picture of the man all of the facts and what we have. But it's just to not jump at like the dog pile him to be
sure. But yeah, I get you. I mean, the High Court did rule it irrelevant. But so Bertie claims in the interview that the dig-outs, he says, a good few of them knew that I had taken a loan out with AIB in O'Connell Street to settle my legal bills. All the people that he names gave testimony that they didn't know that he had a loan with AIB. There's also no evidence from any of the people who gave him these dig-outs that the money had been withdrawn from their accounts in cash. So on the other side,
where did all of them? Yeah,
there's no, because he's saying he got it all in cash and lump sums from these people. It's not that long ago, and the amounts you're talking about are quite substantial for the time, and yet there's no records of them leaving people's accounts.
Why wouldn't the lad just have $5,000 in his back pocket?
I don't know.
But sure, what if they all... was it all at Cheltenham? Were they all...
Well, we haven't got to the horse racing bit yet. I suppose...
But I was going to say, like, it's one of those easy things. You're just like, I won it on a horse.
Yeah.
Or it was like at the casino.
Yeah.
All of Bertie's talks were at the casino. Now, there's no proof the casino actually... Technically, that night, the casino made the most profits they've ever made in their life.
Yeah.
But somehow they've all the clientele have won money. And then giving it directly to Bertie. Don't look into that. That's not.
So we've also got an issue where some of these people are coming out like denying that they, because Bertie's like, everyone knew it was a whip around, everyone blah blah blah, and they're like, well, I don't remember it being like that. I don't remember them being loans. Also, some of these people did get appointed to political state boards.
Wait, so they were saying that they don't remember it being loans, or they were just giving him money?
Yeah,
yeah.
They were like, they're gifts. I think it's just that they're contradicting their own stories.
That's because you'd imagine that you'd think that they'd have this, like they've got a pre-written. Hey, if we ever get caught for this,
for what?
For giving lads loans,
for helping lads
for
out.
Helping fucking.
I'm sorry that I don't remember. Well, if a friend needs a $5, I don't jot that down in a notebook. I'm not. I've
been meaning to bring that up.
Where's your notebook?
I've been on about this for a while. It's like a lot of them say, it's only a $5, but when it's every day,
you got to jot them down the whole time. So I guess Vincent, he puts it from the article. The suggestion that the amount of money involved in Bertie Ahern's finances at the time was in the region of between 50 and 100,000 was not at all fanciful. as Bertie Ahern suggested himself. According to Bertie, he got 39k from his friends, but then mysteriously he had saved 50k at the same time from 1987 to 1993 when A, he did not have a bank account, and B, his ministerial salary would have only been around 35 grand by 29 after tax, and C, he was paying up to 18 grand per annum to his divorced wife. So we are certainly talking of around 89k. And then, of course, there is the 30 grand sterling that emerged from Michael Wall of Manchester on the 2nd of December 1994. And then another 30 grand in sterling, a total of around 150k. So Vincent just doing a bit of maths behind the scene. The numbers don't add up.
They don't. They're still... I don't want to give him... get out of jail. I'm still just trying to, like him and Hawley.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to get the figures in my head of
you
like before. Well, you're never gonna find out how much they all had, and like overall who got more or whatever. I'm just trying to right now. We don't know the rest of what's come out. I'm just trying to keep it. Do you know what? Could you begrudge your man a couple of 100,000 illegal?
Well, you are the barometer for the people at the time, because a lot of people are like, well, you know,
that's not that bad. That's not that. Like, you imagine that everyone knows politicians are corrupt. That when a politician gets caught being corrupt, you're like, there's levels to this.
I don't think maybe I'm wrong. The idea that everyone knows the politicians are corrupt, I think, is out of all of this stuff. I think if you go back to the 1970s, I don't think people thought that politicians were crooked.
Nah, they did.
Not Irish politicians.
Nah, for sure.
Not Charlie. Not I. Why would a man who lives in a mansion be corrupt? Sure, he's got all the money he needs. Doing a good job for the country. But, so, heading into the next year, April 2007, the government's due to call a general election. And up until this point, everything about Bertie and his finances has been relatively private. There's a couple of things that have been leaked from the Tribunal, and then there's his interview with Dobson. But that's it. Everything else has been private so far. But the next phase of the Mahon Tribunal is going to be specifically about the Quarryvale stuff, and Bertie's going to be called as a witness, which means he's going to be in public, having to talk about his finances. That doesn't look good during election time. So they call a snap election.
But as obviously a clearly innocent man would do, does he does he decide to defend himself in court?
He talk about himself in the third person.
Set up his only questions. Now, Bertie, in terms of, look, the problem with Bertie Ahern is Bertie Ahern says more than his prayers.
But Bertie he's not telling his staff when the election is going to be called. He's being evasive about it. He seems down. He's not his normal self. What he does do is at 7 a.m, on the 29th of April, which was the week that the Mahon Tribunal was going to call him in, he heads out to Phoenix Park. He grabs Mary McAleese before she heads off to America, and he calls an election. So it gets to dissolve the government. The Mahon Tribunal basically is forced to go on hold under threat of legal action.
Now, when you say this, did you leave out there that he called to her gaff at, like, is it 6?
Yeah, 7 in the morning.
The gaff is Arsenal. I was like 6 or 7.
It's 7 in the morning, on Sunday morning.
Early.
Sunday morning, if nothing else.
The Lord's Day.
Yeah. So you would see this is the actions of a man who's trying to... this is a
dissolve a government for a normal reason.
Yeah. So the Tom Gilmartin Quarryville stuff, that gets postponed until after the election happens. So Ultra May got the general election. We talked about the results of that in the last episode. Bertie and his government get re-elected, and we enter then into the public phase of the tribunal. So the first time he's questioned publicly in the witness box is September 2007. He's cross-examined on the stand for over 17 hours in total over 15 days, during which he's contradicting bank records, he's contradicting Gilmartin, he forgets where large amounts of money came from, and just generally does his thing, as we've been talking about for the last couple of months. He's just hitting some of the classics.
Look, we've probably contradicted ourselves over the space of these. We've done less than 17 hours on Bertie.
That's true.
And probably contradicted ourselves.
If you go back to the first episodes...
You were saying mad things, like he was innocent and stuff.
So
of what? Not to ever make up.
I don't believe that I'm an innocent man because I have nothing to be innocent of.
That's
so he sticks to his line.
It's only guilty men have to worry about being innocent. Other lads don't even think about it.
Exactly. So he sticks to his line that he had done nothing improper, done no wrong, and wrong no one. All of his lines just sound like folk songs. He insisted that he'd never took a bribe or a backhander or anything from anybody. All right, he's an innocent man. So the first round ends in a stalemate. He didn't trip up, didn't admit to anything, but he also couldn't explain properly where the money was coming from. So it's a draw, basically.
Which shouldn't be...
Well,
that should be a loss, but...
The real roadblock of this is...
He was paid 50 grand for setting up a roadblocks.
If it just gets to a stalemate because they're like, where did this money come from? And he's like, I don't know, or it's my salary, or I forget. And they're like, well,
which one?
No, tell us.
Yeah.
Well, different amounts, different answers, but ultimately they can't force him to say. And if he doesn't trip himself up and is like, oh, that's actually the one that I got bribed for doing rats.
Yeah.
They haven't really got Ed on him.
So you just keep playing
the Bertie game. Welcome to the next round of Bertie Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, one article sums it up as 17 hours in the witness box, still no answers. So round one is a draw. December 2007, so 2 months later, he's back in the witness box again. And again, the tribunal's pressing him on the craziness of not having a bank account for years while also being the Minister for Finance. To which he says, there's nothing in the law or the Constitution that you should, follow the normal issues. Some people put their hair yellow. Some people wear rings in their noses. It's not the normal thing. It's a good defense.
I wish he had been in the witness stand looking like Billy Idol. Just bleached blonde hair
with rings. Yeah.
Rings in
Listen, it's not normal, but hey, I'm a quirky guy, okay? What are you going to do? Arrest all those freaks?
Quirky guy.
There's nothing in the Constitution that says I need to do it. It's because people didn't think that had to be said. But he also said, the reason I probably can't give you a better reflection of what I was doing on the 19th of January is because I didn't do it. I'm sure there are some mornings you get up and you think I might do this or I might do that, and then you don't do them, so it's hard to remember.
Wait, is he admitting that? He's like, I woke up one morning and I was thinking about taking a bribe.
No.
But then, you don't know whether you do or you don't.
You're asking me if I did take this money on this day. I can't remember because I didn't do it. If I, sometimes... If I did it, I'd remember. So the fact that I can't remember means that nothing happened. I'm sure some mornings you get up and you think I might do this or I might do that, and then you don't do them, so it's hard to remember. Just grade A stuff. Round 2 in the box. He's given them nothing. For some of the Sterling stuff,
I just started to picture like the Rocky montages when it comes to the fight. It's just like round 2, round 7, round 14.
For some of the Sterling amounts, he does start to talk about. They keep pressing him on it, and this is where he starts talking about like he won it on some horses, and then the stuff about the house that came from Michael Wall that was bought for him. I think we covered that in one of the other episodes, but that comes up as well, and it's like that's suspicious. That's Ray Burke stuff. There's no money changing hands, but the guy who bought your house, that's a couple of $100,000 worth of political favors right there.
I mean, he bought it back from him.
The house is a funny one. We haven't got enough time to talk about. There's so many characters in this we haven't got time to talk about. But Royston Brady is probably amongst the best.
Yeah,
he was like in Bertie's close inner circle, and then kind of fell out with him and was like openly talking shit about him. And he talks about St. Luke's, which is the house that the house and constituency office in Drumcondra. He said, Ahern was the first person I'd ever seen with underfloor heating in the bathroom. For a man who said he had humble tastes. He said to me once, take your shoes off and feel it. A man who liked to give the view that he sleeps on the couch with an anorak on. So, all the stuff with the house, he's just like...
It's not an anorak.
He says he's a humble man. He likes to paint this picture of himself sleeping on a couch. He is underfloor heating in that place. He did it all.
No, he is on a couch, but underneath that couch is underfloor heating.
And again, this is a big difference between him and Hawley, is that Bertie doesn't really seem to... I don't even know what the money's for. Like, he never seems to be extravagant. Like, this is kind of this.
You're painting a Gustavo Fring type picture.
Yes, yeah. This is Royston Brady smoking gun. He's like he's crooked. He's corrupt. He's paying for underfloor heating. Do you know how much that would cost? I certainly don't.
But no, just to again
reel it in.
You know that it's not an anorak. And I don't know why we're this many episodes in. And
That's not an anorak.
Keep debating this point.
Take it up with Royston Brady. I don't care. In January 2008, the latest opinion poll figures show that the majority of voters do not believe is evidence in the Mahon Tribunal. Just over half of respondents...
But the exact same amount of people said they also don't care.
Well, just over half the respondents said that they did not believe his evidence, while 46 said that they did not trust him to run the country. Just over half means just under half did believe his evidence.
Yeah.
So this is after 2 stints in the witness box. 46% said they did not trust him to run the country, which means 54% did, which means he's got a higher approval rating than most sitting Taoiseachs.
Yeah.
While 2 stints in the tribunal box in. Mm-hmm. But this is January 2008.
Yeah,
which
look,
means
if he had got screwed over by the first tribunal, that approval rating would have went down. You get a draw from that.
yeah, that's 1-1.
You get another draw. All of a sudden, we just need to beat Saudi Arabia. We're into the fucking round of 16, buddy.
Well, it's not a coincidence that all these approval rating figures are coming from early 2008, aka still the good times. Mm-hmm. All right, people, maybe he had a couple of 30 grand. Made that flip of a house yesterday. Didn't even get out of bed for it. Let the man do what he's wanting. So a later poll taken on the 22nd of January 2008, specifically about Ahern's personal finances and tax liabilities, found that 78% of people do not believe he's given the full picture, while 14 believe he has given the full picture.
Gosh, what are those numbers? Who is doing these polls?
Well, it's people just also don't care.
But what are the numbers?
78 said that they do not believe he's given a full picture.
And then 14
believe he has.
And then 8% of people were like...
Which is always these are some of the biggest issues.
No, I'd say he gave most of the pictures. You're saying he didn't give the whole picture. I'm not saying
I don't follow politics.
Is it the full or not the full? I'd be somewhere in between.
Yeah, well, yeah, so 46% said that he should not resign, 44% said that he should, and 10% had no opinion, which is again mad. Crazy. He's taken what? Bertie Ahern? I don't think I've heard of him. He's been in power for how long? A decade. I don't follow.
I've been too busy becoming a millionaire to pay attention to trivial things like politics or ethics or the law.
Or just the news. Or I wouldn't have much of an opinion either way. As long as everyone's happy.
I have got stacks of empty slips that I need to put 5 million quid in. Sitting on my desk at home. If you think I have the time to pay attention to things like who's the leader of the country, try it sometime.
He's not paying taxes, and that's the problem, is it? This is something.
Wait, were we all meant to be?
I don't have any opinion on this. I need to. This interview is over. So Fianna Fáil voters were more likely to be supportive of the Taoiseach. 77% of them said that he shouldn't resign. But despite all that, compared to the previous polls back in October 2007, the government in general had gone up. Fianna Fáil as a party went up 1%. Mm-hmm. And the Green Party and the PDs also up 1. So in general, the government had gone up, opposition had gone down, even while people were like, I don't think he's telling the truth about his finances. But the party is doing a good job. Mm. We're all getting rich.
Well, it's also like you have to respect a man who can get to that position. If you're like, I don't think he's doing this right, but by Christ, he's gotten this far.
The general idea in the public, I guess, was that all these mysterious cash transactions were just Bertie's way of avoiding paying his hag of a wife, and therefore probably fine. Mm-hmm. People said it was so long ago, and sure, he was only trying to hide the money from herself.
We should have polled at least one woman.
It is a wide array of society. We did everybody. We did businessmen. We did trade men. I endangered my life going over to the north side.
We had lads all from the way from 40 to 72, from McGowan's all the way down to Quinn's.
Every aspect of society. We had bankers, we had developers, we had tradespeople. The general idea, he's just using it to hide the money from his wife. And sure, at the end of the day, it was as bad as that other fella, High. That's the big picture, all right? February 2008 is where it all really starts to come to a boiling point for him, which also is coinciding with, I think, Bear Stearns collapses mid-March, and that's kind of the first big sign that things are not going to be good. But February 2008, people still have their head in the sands. Everything's still fine. I don't know why I found this so funny, but in early early February 2008, the Tribunal calls in the FBI to take a look at Frank Dunlop's diaries from the period in question.
Female bodies.
I feel like they knew Dunlop was lying, so they get the FBI in to look at the diaries that Dunlop's given them from the period they're talking about. I feel like they just knew he was lying, and they're like, "Well, if you don't tell us," it feels like the sort of threat your mom would make to be like, "I'll get the FBI in."
You think that the FBI is the man?
Yeah, we'll get the man. Yeah,
I'm going to call the man. I'm going to go call the man.
Just got
Only this time it is like a 70s fucking acid, like conspiracy theorists. The man is big government.
They just got some intern to put on a pair of dark sunglasses and a suit and walked in and was like, "Yep, he's lying."
They got Neo from the fucking Cork military episode.
Yeah. What? Because they bring in FBI experts to look at the diaries, and they see that they had been doctored, specifically meetings to do with Owen O'Callaghan, Frank Dunlop, and Bertie. Dates have been changed, times have been changed, and amounts have been changed. So they look at them under a laser. I feel like just the way it was reported maybe in 2008 just made it sound all high-tech. I was like, yeah, we put it through the laser machine. It turns out you're a rat liar. Yeah. So how about you start fessing up now? So it seems like the key... And this is something that's kind of because
they move the laser over the paper and delete everything. It's like, all right, we're really gonna fucking we gotta get him to admit to this right now.
It just seems like he's changed a 0 to an 8 by scribbling on it a few times. But Dunlop's been given evidence for years, but there's also an accusation that you feed him a little to hide the big picture stuff, and he does throw a lot of people under the bus and give a lot of evidence, but never anything directly related around the big claim of Owen O'Callaghan and Bertie Ahern. And here it seems like he purposely doctored his diaries to hide that sort of stuff. So that's early February. Now, another big smoking gun in February. The Tribunal...
was the smoking gun they shot Liam Lawler with before they fucking had him careen into a bowl.
Looks like he's... I think I know what a car crash victim looks like. He's got a rope around his neck. And he's got a death grip and a bit of paper that has Vladimir Putin's phone number on it. All right, I've seen this 100 times. So you're going to like this. All right, February 2008, Tribunal brings in a star witness, a Mr. Eamon Dunphy. Did you know this?
No. Oh wait, no. Hold on. Let me try. No, because I've seen him talk about Bertie before, and I've seen him on. I thought he probably would have been the intro to get him onto. Well, obviously anyone would have been the intro to get him onto the Premiership back in 2002. Was it 2002, 2001 when he was doing all the media stuff?
Oh yeah, sure.
Was it the getting Bertie back in the good books?
Yeah,
that they would have been mates. That there would have been.
Well, this isn't the behavior of mates, all right? So,
well, no. So I know that as well. That because I want to do a separate episode just about the Bertie Bowl and about the history of like how we ended up having the Aviva Stadium.
Sure, yeah.
Instead of having two other stadiums.
Yeah,
in other locations, and just all of that, and how Eamon Dunphy tried to. Well, actually, Joe, I'll save that for a whole other thing. But basically, he tried to fucking ruin the League of Ireland to get a Premiership football team in Dublin.
Well, was it Wimbledon FC?
Yeah.
So this is this period.
This is what they would have fell out over. I guess that it was Dunphy had like properly put his neck out on the line, been like, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to look like a fucking prick.
Oh wait, so you're saying Dunphy has means to besmirch Bertie over this?
Over this, I would imagine so.
Well, interesting. All right. Well, Dunphy. So he brings evidence to the Tribunal in February, and he says that he'd worked with Owen O'Callaghan extensively during a campaign to move Wimbledon FC to Dublin in the 90s. And during that time, Dunphy said that O'Callaghan had described Bertie as someone who failed to deliver on his commitments, a man who'd strike deals but never do the business. So Dunphy says O'Callaghan had claimed Ahern had been looked after or taken care of, and he interpreted this to mean that O'Callaghan had bribed Bertie Ahern or given him some sort of favour in return for Ahern granting the tax breaks on the Golden Island Shopping Centre in Athlone.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got beef with Bertie. All of a sudden, he remembers. Actually, I was there when he specifically said, I paid Bertie Ahern 80 grand.
Well, this is interesting because like, for a man who then would have, obviously, like that's a lot of it's been forgotten now because people don't remember things past a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
But like the people kind of like Eamon, and he's been, but like at the time, and we'll delve into this in the what I assume will be a 20-hour long episode. Where I interview every single person who's ever been to an Irish football game.
All 14 of them.
And you paid for the Vantage Club. Honestly, oh my God.
Hello and welcome to a pitch for some live shows that we have coming up.
Belfast.
Oh yeah.
Belfast.
Yes.
Belfast.
That is the first one, yes. But we've also got Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Dundalk, and then Dublin again.
Belfast.
And also Belfast. That is happening soon, the 21st of March. The rest of them, the dates, if you look in the description of this episode, they're all written there. There's links to buy all the tickets. Why not come out and see us, your favorite podcast hosts, doing stories live for your benefit?
April and May, the 2 months right before the good months come in.
Exactly.
It's your last chance to have a memory of... Do you remember what it was like to be indoors having fun before the definitely guaranteeable put your whole house on it warm Irish summer between June and September?
100%. You're not even going to darken the doorstep of a pub between June and September. May as well come in, spend the last couple of days indoors with us, your favourite boys. So, that's once again Belfast.
Belfast.
Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Dundalk. If these places sound familiar to you, get the hell in there and buy some tickets, and we'll see you for a live show. So early, also in February 2008, the third big item, Bertie gets called up into the witness box for the third time. Just like our Lord Jesus Christ, 3 times accused. During a heated exchange between Bertie and Judge Mahon, Bertie says that his former partner, Celia Larkin, received a loan of 30,000 punts from a special Fianna Fáil fundraising account in order to buy a house in 1993. Now, there's no document, well, I mean, obviously at this point, there's no documentation to back up that it was a loan or any proof that Larkin tried to pay it back. There's no record of it. Even
if there was a record of it.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about politics. I assume that you could, to get a board to sign off on a loan.
Well, who's signing off? It's in the account. You take it out, you pay it back. Or it hasn't been paid back. She's getting round to it. I mean, it's on record. There's no record of it. I'm sure I know the woman, okay? Well, this is another classic political line.
Interest? No. That'd be in the outgoings account. That'd be the...
Sure, it was safer. You better all put the money in the house. If you left it in the safe, sure, any Liam Lauder would have taken it off to Moscow.
What do you mean that debt's wrote off? Oh, in fairness, I was locked when I signed it.
So, I was really wrote off myself. This is where is another famous line. Bertie says, "It was a political donation for my personal use." Which is great. What the hell does that mean? It was donated for the party for me to use. Because it's going into an official Fianna Fáil.
Isn't this the exact type of thing that he's been trying to distance himself from all the other...
Yeah.
It's like that there is no way for that. Like the accusations that have been leveled at him in the past are this money has been put into the party and you've taken it out.
Yeah.
For personal use. It's like, no, that's never happened. And now he's openly saying that was given to the party.
To the party for me to use personally. It's a political donation for my personal use. Okay? I don't understand what you're not following here, Judge. So apparently during this he gets quite thick with him. Because I mean this is sort of
but even with the fact that you've said is like, after a heated exchange between the defendant
and the judge. Yeah, so he's getting annoyed.
Liam, I will not tell you again what you have said. I really want to find a video of that, of the judge giving out to Liam Lawler.
Oh, yeah. Liam, I can't believe I have to say this again. You can't shout at the witnesses. Liam Lawler would never intimidate a witness.
Just doing the cutthroat thumb sign.
Yeah.
To the judge.
I never said anything to them. I guess the fourth key thing that happens in February, there's a clip I'd found of like Bertie mistakenly says that Cavan is in Northern Ireland. And people are like, "Oh, you fucking idiot. You dumb donkey. How do you not know where Cavan is?" And that's a pretty funny slip up for him. It happens like right like in February 2008. Like right as all this is happening. And he's like, he's a broken man. He's in the door and he accidentally says Cavan's in Northern Ireland. Or he's talking about something and someone's cutting across him and they're like, what about Cavan? What about Cavan? He's like, we're talking about the Republic here. And everyone's like, oh, you fucking moron. Look at a map. But behind the scenes, he's just being fucked.
He gets that
by his own fault, absolutely. But
big white line comes down between the middle of the screen. We get a sliding doors moment. if Bertie hadn't said Cavan was in the north, and he's still in power.
Yeah. That was the thing that broke it for a lot of people. So in February, after the whole, it was a political donation for my personal use. It turns out his ex-partner has been taking 30 grand out to buy a house. Opposition leaders called for the Taoiseach's resignation. All right, so now things are getting serious. But again, in March of 2008, the 3rd of March, there's a Red Sea poll for the Sunday Business Post showing Fianna Fáil support at 37, which is up from a month ago when it was
But
at
still
34.
down from 44.
Nope. No, that's his personal resigning. So to go... So the poll I have, it's not from the same company, so you can't compare it necessarily like from like, but the poll that I have from the 22nd of January 2008, Fianna Fáil are polled on at 34%, and they're up 1% from October. So they were, after the Bertie gets called to the Tribunal the first time, they're at 33. After the second time, they're at 34. And now after the third time, they're at 37. Mm-hmm. So... whatever about his, people are like, they don't believe him and the money stuff, but the party is keep going up. At some point, you do reap what you sow as a nation. I think.
It's anyone. It's like that.
It's not anyone.
No, but I mean, like, it's any country that has like a bipartisan, political structure where you're kind of like realistically that you could be like, where else are the votes going to go to? That if it's good,
yeah, like, it says Fine Gael goes down a point, which means at some point during all of this, when they're like Bertie's in the news for being in the tribunals, people were like, you know what? I don't trust Enda Kenny.
Yeah,
I like this other guy. Like, people are switching from the opposition. I don't think it's insane.
I don't think it's as much that in Ireland as sometimes that it's just people would almost renege their right to vote or their right to poll.
Yeah,
that when people are asked, I wouldn't even. They just abstain from it. Or it's just, you've still got the exact same amount of people following your party.
Yeah.
It's just at that time, how invested are they in the party?
Sure.
When it comes around to voting time, it's very difficult to make them actually switch between things. Like, very rarely you'll ever see someone switch from Fianna Fáil to Fine Gael. Usually as a way they'll either abstain from voting, they don't go to Sinn Féin, they'll vote for like the PDs or the Green, or they just won't vote at all, and then younger people will go vote for like Sinn Féin. But people of a different age group will just be like, I'm just not voting.
Yeah, that's a funny idea to think of, like, everyone who's turning 18 in like February 2008, like, yes, finally I can vote Fianna Fáil. Yeah. Like us, basically. We would have been 18 around then.
But that's no, guys. I remember
like, hot dog.
The big switch then was kind of like everyone was going to vote Fine Gael. Like, the big time when Fine Gael got in, it was like, because the other parties fucked it up so much, we're going to give it to this new party who's going to deal with a fucked country. And we're all going to just kind of complain about that.
Yeah.
And then also still go, we're not voting back in the other lads.
Yeah, except they did get back in anyway.
Yeah.
But in the same poll, that Red Sea poll in March 2008, 53% of the people polled say they did not believe Mr. Hearn's evidence in the tribunal, while 50% said they did not trust him to run the country. Now, I'm kind of a half glass full sort of a fella. That still means he's got roughly 50% approval rating, which I did a quick research. True, like, that's about as good as Varadkar had at the peak of COVID, when everyone was like, you know what? He's not doing a bad job.
Yeah.
Before people started throwing milkshakes at him. Like, 50%.
That Terminator reference?
Yeah. People were like, I like his socks. 50%
This is before,
really
this
good.
is before the Mean Girls one.
Yeah.
We're in a weird time period. We're post-Terminator, pre-Mean Girls. Things have never been as good.
It's sunny. It's April 2020. Everyone's like, a couple of days off work. It ain't so bad. So this is the turning point, it seems. 20th of March 2008. Bertie is out of the country for St. Patrick's Week. He's over glad-handing with the president. And his former secretary, Gráinne Carruth, was up in the witness box. She's under serious pressure from the tribunal. They're hammering her about these payments. And eventually she admits, as a matter of probability, that a lodgement of £15,000 she made into Bertie's Drumcondra account in the 1990s had been in sterling. So this directly contradicts what Bertie had been saying. She breaks down crying.
She's misremembering.
She breaks down crying while giving the submission. She's in tears on the stand. The judges are threatening her with so giving false evidence, 300 grand fine and 2 years imprisonment.
Like, you're saying they're just like threatening her as she's breaking down crying.
Yeah.
Like, tell us the truth right now. We're gonna I just feel like that eventually then would be thrown out at a higher court. That if, like,
Well, no, they're like, no, they're
once
it's a
someone's
lie.
under, like, severe duress. They
No.
just start like lobbying the fucking, hey, if you don't fucking tell us the truth right now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna start just throwing random numbers.
Was
at
she?
you.
Well, they're coming at her with all the evidence. She's like, I don't know where this might get. I don't think. And it's like, isn't it? They just keep saying like, because she's not Bertie basically, and she hasn't got that whole like. Well, I know it doesn't look like Mahon and Sterling, but a lot of things don't look like what they should look like. Have you seen these young folk with their yellow hair and their earrings? You know, she's just a normal person. So they're asking her, and they keep coming at her with questions. And if you give false evidence, 300 grand fine, 2 years imprisonment. They're leveling all this at her. The famous line is, she's breaking down crying. She says, I just want to go home. And this seems to be the watershed moment. People don't like this. They've kind of see that she has been left out there by himself.
You see this happen a lot in like depositions or in court.
Yeah.
When someone is caught. It's just such. I've heard it so many times where someone's like, "I just want to go home."
Yeah.
That you're not like, you've removed yourself in your brain. That like, no, you're in a fucking like you're being.
But the poor woman.
I know the poor woman.
Yeah.
But it's just like, what I want to do now to get out of this court proceeding is just go. I'm done. I want to
I
go
just
home.
want to go
You're
home.
like, that's the smoking gun.
Yeah.
That now it's like you need to. If you don't answer everything now.
Yeah, well, this is, but it's more, I think it's more the image of like, all right, it was all fun and games when it was Bertie, and he's just, ducking and diving, and he's giving as good as he's getting.
Now you're making women cry.
Now you're making, and there's also like, he's over in, it's kind of an image that he's left her behind, and he's fucked off to America to hang out in the White House, and left this poor woman to get blasted by mean, nasty lawyers who are threatening her with, punishment for. She's probably not lying. She probably just doesn't remember. I mean, it would have been quite a long while ago at that point, but I think they're just like, I don't know, whatever. It turns the public opinion against Bertie.
Against Bertie, and he's left her behind, and it is like that's
He could
have just brought her on the plane, holiday to America.
Yeah, he left her. I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, he can't be weird for him not to go to America for St. Patrick's Day.
Bring her.
I don't think you can be like, she can't actually show up to give evidence against me today because she's going on a whole expense trip to Washington, D.C. via Disneyland, Florida.
Well,
no, nothing inappropriate happened. I
imagine you could just like throw it out to be like, hey, no, that's my.
But she's not working for him at the time. She's his former secretary.
No, that's fair then.
Yeah. So it is kind of funny that this is the thing that this is the thing that turns people.
That's Irish people tend to.
It makes sense in some ways, but also you're like, well, what about all the evidence? I mean,
it's never the scandal. It's how you react to the scandal,
or it's how you.
It's not the illegal stuff you've done. It's who you throw under the bus as you're getting caught.
It's you don't think of the little people who get damaged along the way. Also, at this point, we are getting probably close to the economy falling to shit, and people are like, you know what? Actually, it's not okay anymore. This isn't funny.
It was all fun and games. When it was still fun and games.
So this is it. Like we talked about, the opposition party called for his resignation, but now after this, on the 2nd of April, 2008, Bertie Ahern announces his intent to resign from the position of Taoiseach, and he steps down on the 6th of May 2008. So that's it. Mm-hmm. He's done. He'd been in power for the third time for a year. They won their general election the May previous, and now he'd gone through 3 tribunals himself. People, it seemed to be roughly 50-50 whether people believed them. I assume of even the people who said they believed them didn't, but maybe didn't care.
That's the question should be,
do you care? Yeah. And 50% of people don't. And then we get this, harrowing image of a woman who just wants to go home.
Yeah.
And she's been boxed into a corner, left behind by gallivanting Bertie Ahern, who, let's all remember, didn't know where Cavan was a couple of weeks ago. All right, and that's it. It's done.
God, he remembers where Washington D.C. is when it comes to Paddy's Day. Over there, shaking shamrocks.
It's disgraceful. But remember, in one of the other episodes back when the McCracken Tribunal was coming about, Bertie said, "It is quite unacceptable that a member of Dáil Éireann, and in particular a cabinet minister and Taoiseach, should be supported in his personal lifestyle by gifts made to him personally."
Jesus.
That was a good line.
Lucky that never came back.
There's a lucky that didn't, in 1997. So, yeah, a good 6 years after he had, whatever the story you believe, even if it is the dig outs and the whatever, like that happened. He had that money. 6 years later, he's like, it's actually disgusting that Charlie Haughey did this. So that is, that's probably the end of the Mahon Tribunal bit. That's brought it up now to him stepping down as Taoiseach. We'll have Bertie post stepping down.
Bertie's best bits.
Bertie's best bits from him resigning as Taoiseach all the way up until modern time where he tries to come back at it again. Was
it the podcast they had him do the other year? It's like, as I remember it. Whatever it was like the peace process. He didn't. He's famous for not remembering anything for large swathes, specifically that time period.
Yeah.
Like that exact time period they're asking about, like all of these important questions. He's like, I can't really remember any of it, but he can down to a fucking second.
Yeah,
remember every important part that he played in the peace process, but nothing to do with his.
Is that important? This will give the background for. We still have to do an episode of his last term, his third term in Taoiseach, 2007, up until when he resigns. But this will give the background for why he resigns, and then we'll do one last roundup for all the fun stuff he gets to afterwards. But in terms of the Mahon Tribunal, we've also got in April of 2008, Pádraig Flynn denied accusations that he personally benefited from the 50 grand that Tom Gilmartin had said he'd given him. It was meant to be for Fianna Fáil. He claimed at the time that the money was a personal political donation. It's a good phrase, which he'd heard a couple of months previous. Is like, you know what? That sounds like it's got legs. The tribunal heard that Flynn had attempted to get Gilmartin to lie about the payment and its purpose. Flynn obviously denied this, but it would come out that Fianna Fáil basically never got the 50 grand. They traced the 50 grand check that he gave it to him. Turns out it ended up in an account that Flynn and his wife had access to, and they used it to buy a farm. So even when you're bribing, this is the real scandal of
That's
it.
the real
Gilmartin,
issue,
when he does give in and bribe the lads, it doesn't go anywhere. It literally just goes to, because they see him as a fool.
What's 50 grand if he's going to give you 500 grand the next week?
That's true.
That's just to grease the wheels.
The Gardaí would also later admit that they never actually questioned any of the people when Gilmartin brought the complaint to them, because the people involved were politicians. In June, we've got a big quote here. We have a former Taoiseach who has gone into the tribunal essentially giving the John Gilligan defence, that he won the money at the horses. Now, this is the defence of drug dealers. This is a defence for pimps. This is not the kind of thing that should be tolerated from a former Taoiseach and a former member of this house, but we do nothing. We wash our hands, we say it's a matter for the tribunal, and there's no accountability, there's no ethics, and we ask ourselves why people have such a low opinion of politicians. And that was a young man called Leo Varadkar. Now, before you get too jazzed up about him, he did roll back hard on that statement in recent years. He was kind of
like the Trump golf course.
Yeah, he knows which way the wind's blowing at the time, but he's heralded at the time as being one of the people who speaks out the strongest against Bertie after he steps down. But then in like the last year or two, he's like, I was young and said a lot of things I didn't mean. In 2008, in December 2008, the tribunal has its last day basically, and it publishes its final report in March of 2012. There's 3,270 pages of it. It's sent to the Garda Commissioner and the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Revenue Commissioner and the Standards in Public Office Commission. Judge Mahon stated in the report that corruption in public life continued because nobody was prepared to do enough to stop it. This is perhaps inevitable when corruption ceases to become an isolated event and becomes so entrenched that it is transformed into an acknowledged way of doing business. Specifically because corruption affected every level of Irish political life, those with the power to stop it were frequently implicated in it. Which is good insight after spending
like anyone could have told you that before.
The place is so fucking corrupt, it's hard to stop the corruption because they wouldn't even know how to do the jobs without it.
But sure, if the corrupt lads, if they weren't there, they wouldn't be able to show the new lads how to do things properly.
It found officially that Pádraig Flynn wrongly and corruptly sought donation from Tom Gilmartin.
Did they get the farm back from him? Did they get the farm back? Like, if you use that money to buy a farm, can that just be...
This is 2012, let me remind you, a time of deep, deep sorrow for the nation. Would you like to be the politician who says, I'm going to go steal a farm from an innocent Mayo man? Just a man, not even his wife, a homemaker. You disgust me.
That sickens my fucking bollocks. Just like that whatever about all of the like, you know they're corrupt. You have to at least take back the things that you know they've bought corruptly that are wrong, because you realistically know that they've kept 80% of it that you're never going to find. That you're just not going to find it. Like, did he keep all the house in Brussels? Did he keep the fucking like house in Dublin and all of that?
He lost all that in a different scandal. We haven't got time to go into this, but during all of this stuff, like when he's on the Late Late Show,
but he has kids out in this country now.
No, he's in again that Late Late interview. He's talking about his daughter, who's also Beverly Cooper Flynn, is also in a big scandal at the time, and he's like, she's innocent. She's a great politician. She was a politician. Yeah. The reason he's there is because he's implicated in some EU scandal and she's implicated in some other scandal, and they were both corrupt. Don't be shaking your head, all right?
I've kept it pretty light. I've been playing Bertie's devil's advocate for about like 12 hours. But the farm? They're going to let him keep the farm.
The controversial farm bought by Dorothy Flynn, sight unseen, is a forlorn spot. She didn't even buy a good farm. Oh yeah, it was blah blah blah. Lucrative. Oh, okay.
Wait, did they put a telephone pole up there? Like, was it rezoned then? There was
there's a lucrative grants.
Oh, is there?
There's forestry grants.
Oh, geez, that's mad how that would happen. Yeah. And just once, I suppose, maybe when those grants finally finish up, do you know what? There's going to be a motorway built through that field as well.
Not long after the existence of the farm and its new owners, the Flynns, were publicly revealed at the Mahon Tribunal, a fire broke out at the site.
Shocking. Yes, it was actually. It was an electrical fire.
Yeah. I said locals do their best to give directions. We don't want to talk about it's controversial. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think they just kept the farm. But I'm sure they stopped the grant money going out to them. That I can assure you.
That
probably. Yeah. So it found that Bertie Ahern had failed to truthfully explain the source of £165,000 made into accounts connected to him, and it rejected his evidence of dig-outs. It accepted his claim that he didn't have a bank account between the years of 87 and 93, but rejected his assertion that he had built up around £54,000 in savings by that time, legally. But he was found not guilty of corruption because it couldn't be proved that he gave any favours to any of his cash donors when he was finance minister in the 90s.
And that's always a very difficult thing to prove.
Yeah.
Like it's always going to be difficult to prove, even though it's not. Yeah. But it's the smell test.
Yeah.
But though, what the fuck is the deal with getting paid your government salary in cash? Like, who signs off on that?
Well, it's checks. And then he would have Kurth or whoever else was working for him go down and cash the checks to cash and then put the cash in a safe.
Just feels mad.
He went down to... No, it is insane. Because I suppose that was the normal... You'd have a check, bring the check into the bank or whatever, but he was bringing the checks down to probably Fagan's, getting it over the counter there and then just putting it in a box. A big metal box in St. Luke's. Hey, listen, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you need to do things the normal way, okay? He's a visionary.
Put that behind the bar there now and make sure that there's one for everyone in my seat.
Yeah. I assume Bass is okay for everybody. So in the report, it says, much of the explanation provided by Ahern as to the source of the substantial funds identified and inquired into in the course of the tribunal's public hearings was deemed by the tribunal to be untrue. But they couldn't say it was corruption because they didn't know where the dollars sterlings came from, and they pushed him on it. He didn't give an answer. That's as much as they could do, I guess. Which I don't, because there's also, like, Liam Holder's held in contempt of court. Kurth being threatened for lying to the tribunal. They obviously have some sort of power if they think people are lying to them. But I guess he just lies so well. I feel like every time he comes in, they're just like, well, I'm glad you answered all the questions, and they shake his hand and he walks off and they're like, wait a minute. He didn't answer anything.
It's just that easy to get out of, like, any of these.
Well, you say it's easy, but I'd like you try it sometime. I mean, this guy was a pro. He was the best in his game.
But it is just like you just plead the fifth as much as you can.
Yeah.
As much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then occasionally get angry about something that someone has said. It was Bertie said it before in interviews. Did you ever see the interview where he goes like, Sure, look, what people ask when people start asking you questions in politics, the main thing to remember is you don't answer the question. What you do is, because people will throw you as what's meant to be a straight question, and what you do is you realise that's not a straight question at all. A part of it's straight, a part of it's not. You pick that part, you start picking that part apart. All of a sudden, you spend 20 minutes talking about the part that's not true. You say that's meant to be a truthful question. All of a sudden, they're not paying attention. You move on to the next thing. Openly saying how he just deflects and deals with accusations.
How politics works.
Yeah.
Well,
and everyone's like, you know what? He's dead right. And that's not a smoking gun to be like, yeah, he's guilty of anything.
Yeah.
But it is someone openly admitting that, yeah, if someone asks me a legitimate question, I'm going to find a way to get out of answering that.
No one ever asks you legitimate questions. They're all out to get you.
Yeah, even when his daughters talk about him, of being like, do you know, I'd be talking to Dad for a half an hour and realise he's actually said nothing.
Well, Ahern, he testified that all undocumented payments were unsolicited gifts. And at the end of all the probes into the payments, it turns out that, luckily enough, all of the undocumented payments from abroad were unsolicited gifts, and that any undocumented payments from inside Ireland were loans, because coincidentally at the time the tax law said that you didn't have to pay tax on gifts from overseas or domestic loans.
Why didn't you?
Inverse, you would. Overseas loans and in.
Why didn't you just say that before you reeled off all of this nonsense about tribunals?
It turns out that actually each one of them
I
perfectly
can't remember
fit
any
in.
of it.
Yeah,
but also,
yeah. Where's this payment one? Well, which one's the legal one? It was that one. It all makes sense, you know. Ahern made no repayments on the 1993 loans. So, you know, he says they're loans because that's what it makes the most sense for not paying tax on them. But he hadn't made any repayments on the loans from 1993 until the investigations discovered them 14 years later. Ultimately, he did make some sort of tax settlement. I don't know if that's public knowledge, but I don't know what the figure was. He did make some sort of tax settlement to them. Separately, based on evidence from Gilmartin and from Eamon Dunphy, the tribunal said that it was satisfied the developer Owen O'Callaghan had inferred to Dunphy anyway that Ahern had received payments to ensure certain tax statuses for shopping centre developments went his way. It also said that in 1993, the then Taoiseach Albert Reynolds and Bertie Ahern, who was Minister for Finance at that time, wrote to Owen O'Callaghan seeking a substantial donation. So, according to the report, O'Callaghan felt compelled to donate a sum of 80 grand to the Fianna Fáil fund in order to get funding for the stadium in Neilstown, or to get that progressed. But the Mahon Tribunal said it did not find the payment to be corrupt, but it was improper to pressure.
They asked him for it, or he just
they said if unrelated to anything that you're doing. Because there was definitely, he never directly talked to them about getting this done. He would probably talk to like Dunlop or Liam Lauder or whatever. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, you get an unsolicited phone call. They're just calling up rich businessmen in the area, seeing if they would, a kindly, timely donation.
You walk into a bar, it's a busy bar.
Yeah.
You walk up, you get your first drink. Do you tip the barman? You do.
Yeah.
Now, there's no guaranteed rule that says every other time you come to the bar, he's going to look back through 3 layers of people and go, tis your man who gave you money. What do you want first?
Yeah.
You go first. But you feel compelled to do that because you know it might make nothing's written in law.
But maybe he just, Owen O'Callaghan, he wanted to give something back to the community. It's hard to say. The report does say that pressuring a businessman to donate money while he's seeking support for a commercial project was...
They didn't pressure him.
Entirely inappropriate and was an abuse of political power and government authority.
What pressure? He felt compelled.
They rang him.
Right.
What they should have done is ring him. Well, and when he answered, hang up, and then when he rings back, he's like, I missed the call from this number. He's like, no, I don't think so. Who is this, by the way? Oh, O'Callaghan, the developer. Now that I have you.
Look, I would like my corrupt property developers to have a little bit more moral fibre.
Yeah. The report also said that Ahern's government, who I guess this is one of the big ironies of it, they started this whole tribunal process back in 1997 to get, the one rotten apple. They're like, just Ray Burke, once he's rooted out, this whole thing's done. The report says that his government had launched an extraordinary and unprecedented attack on their work in a bid to stop it all once the target of the investigation became Ahern himself. So from the point where it became obvious they were looking into him, they're like, hey, you can wrap this up at any time, lads, back in 2004. The main recommendations of the reports were more robust whistleblowing legislation, a new planning regulator, new limits on political donations, new registers for lobbyists, a ban on members of the Oireachtas who are convicted of bribery from holding public office. It's crazy that wasn't in there before. After the publication of the final report, Fianna Fáil sought to expel any of its members who were found to have received corrupting payments, including Bertie Ahern, Pádraig Flynn, and a couple of other names. They all resigned from Fianna Fáil before they could be expelled. So he steps down as Taoiseach in 2008, and then in 2012 he leaves the party altogether. And then in 2023 he came back. But that's for the next episode. Just as a final kind of wrap up on a few things, like we talked about Reynolds there, he's also part of soliciting this thing for O'Connell. Every politician who comes out hard against him was no more than the Bertie quote when he's given out about how he's like, no one should be living off dig-outs and handouts or whatever. And Albert Reynolds goes hard after Bertie for taking these bribes, and it turns out he was also involved in soliciting from Owen O'Callaghan. Micheál Martin, who steps in to lead Fianna Fáil, he says, the receipt by a senior office holder of large amounts of money, which a sworn tribunal has held, is of unclear origins, and the failure to give any credible explanation requires an unequivocal response. Now, that's from Micheál Martin, who had served under Ahern in 3 separate cabinet posts. In 2011, while new leader of Fianna Fáil, he went on Ireland AM and got grilled about why there was 5k in his wife's account, also from Owen O'Callaghan. At which point he was like, well, no, we were just here to drag Bertie under the coals.
Oh.
So, yeah,
that was 2012?
2011.
2011.
It came up in the tribunal as well.
But what about we'd said that, you just said there's like anyone who's...
Yeah, but this is old news. Also, it wasn't his account, it was his wife's account. Just because it happens to be the same property developer. He's from Cork. Cork people know each other. They give each other money. I
hate him so much. That he's so slimy.
Yeah.
And he is no crack.
But it's the same thing they all did, where they just wrote, like, you have to explain this. And I was like, well, what about the time you did it? I was like, well, now that... I think he spins the whole thing about, like, when, it's not my wife's account, it's a political Fianna Fáil account that she has access to for whatever reason. And that money, literally, he does that money's just resting in the account.
I don't know why I hate him more than Leo.
Don't know.
I don't know. There's just something that I can't. There's never.
He looks like Mr. Burns.
Yeah, that's true.
Whoa, that's a different politician.
Yeah, and we're not going to do we're not probably not. We've no time to do the Leo episode.
Not today. We'll do it next week. But so the last bits. Yeah, in January 2009, Frank Dunlop confessed to involvement in 20 corrupt rezonings, and is later charged of corruption over paying bribes to a number of councillors for rezoning land. I think it's Carrick Mines is specifically the one that gets him in the end. He is sentenced to 2 years in prison and released in 2010. In 2005, he was charged with a tax bill of almost $500,000. I think unrelated to, after he'd repented and done his time, there's I think unrelated $500,000 that he didn't pay. But also in October 2023, just gone by, The Ditch released an article saying that they had evidence that Dunlop was still running his firms and signing documents while he was in jail that time. So he was the head of Nairo Consulting Limited, which used to be called Frank Dunlop and Associated Limited, but they changed the name after he got done for that massive scandal. And an investment firm, Chevron Limited, which will come up in some of the other tribunal episodes. But they had evidence that they have documents that he signed during the period while he was in prison for both those companies, which is itself a crime.
Yeah, of course, but even that's like you see it with Trump, that we get like his kids just as soon as he became like he was the elected official or whatever the date cut off point is, that like, yeah, I'm not in charge of any of my businesses because I'm not allowed to be. Well, I'm going to be the president. So who am I sending it all off to? Oh, it's my son and my other son and my other son. Just any of the ones who aren't directly involved in my political campaigns. Yeah, they're just going to sign they're all my CEOs. Yeah. It's so easy to just like flout the law, just go around it. Well, to sign something from jail. Yeah. Just don't do that. But it means you don't trust anyone. It means you don't even have like a patsy.
He probably didn't. I think because his PR firm was just him and one other person, who was probably just him as well under a fake name for tax reasons. I don't know. But The other big figures we got, Tom Gilmartin. He dies in November 2013 as a result of heart failure.
In Russia.
The stress of the tribunal led to him needing a quadruple bypass. Hundreds turned out for his funeral to pay their respects to a brave whistleblower. Whistle tea blower.
I thought we were done paying.
If you want to get next to the coffin, it's going to cost you. All right. George Redmond, I think we talked about in maybe the last bit or the previous bit that he, along with Ray Burke, gets sentenced to prison, but there's something to do with technically how the tribunal conducted. They had, I don't know if they withheld evidence of different accounts that could have or should have been brought up during his part of it. Whatever it is, they basically used that to get his guilty verdict for corruption overthrown, and he's released. So he gets to spend his time afterwards saying that he was vindicated, wrongly accused. So the tribunal cost the state, by 2002, the tribunal cost the state 21 million, but it had recovered 34.5 million, which is pretty good by 2002. Now, by the time it actually ended, I think it cost more than 250 million. But still
recovered 35 million.
So it's still going. Actually, there's meant to be a report this year to finalize it all up. So we will know maybe by the end of 2024. At the minute, the last figure I got was that it cost 142 million. So I think that's taken into account the money they got back. So, yeah. Because the last figure in 2012 is 250 million. So I assume it's come down because they've recouped money. So 142 million. But, you know.
Which, hey, look, at least Bertie isn't in politics anymore.
142 million, it took a decade. A lot of lawyers got paid.
I mean, when you break that down, that's what a decade is 14.2 million a year.
Is that better? It's more than a decade. It's more like 15 years. Really.
It's 10 million a year.
It's pocket change.
Probably not even 10 million. That's nothing. That's the cost of doing business.
We'll find out.
You got to spend money to not recoup money. I don't know if you want to live with the law, Kevin.
Yeah, but the final report will be out this year, and then we'll figure out the final number. But yeah, probably around 144 million.
Just wait for that. Why is there 400 million gone to priests' flights to Africa?
Well, I mean, some of the big scandals, I don't know if they ever looked into this, but like, there's this whole thing of the Gardaí not investigating claims. Yeah. Don't know if anything happened with those high up executives in the IB pushing for the Fianna Fáil backed developer to get land from Gilmartin. You get Ray Burke goes to prison. George Redmond goes to prison. Gets exonerated later on. Frank Dunlop, I think, spent some time in prison. Bertie does step down. That's probably the big one. And then there are, 5 or 6 other councillors and politicians who step down. But it does, the Taoiseach does resign over it. Not directly, but because his secretary cries on TV.
Yeah.
But, we're in a much better place now.
Does Ian Lawler have any photos of him in the past with the Clintons?
Liam Lawler? Yeah. Maybe. He's on the Clinton hit list.
Yeah. So the Liam Lawler thing for me is mad. Just that the timing of that would happen.
Yeah.
And that is something that you wouldn't necessarily... Because it is all jovial. It's all like... It's not... I mean, a load of money's been lost. The country's been fucked. There's a reason why people are spending $2,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment that's nowhere near the city. Like, there's...
It's not their fault. If these boys were allowed to do what they were just trying to do...
If lads had left them to their own devices...
Yeah. It's only a matter of time. I mean, to be honest, it seems to be a lot of land, a lot of things are being built and rezoned. Because it came up with, I think this is going to come up in one of the other episodes, but like, I've been guilty of saying this as well myself. One of the big issues with the housing crisis, one of the factors of it is that, it's hard to get supplies here. Supplies are expensive, and after Brexit, it's been more difficult to get stuff from overseas to build apartments or buildings in general. In the research for some of the other episodes, CRH, the International Buildings Material Business, is one of the biggest manufacturer supplies in the world. It's an Irish company. Their headquarters is in Dublin.
Yep.
They provide cement to half of America. Yeah.
No,
they're that's spawned out of like a high era. That's all That's all next year's project.
No, but I mean, that's all. Like, it's all been bollocks. That's like we've talked about that before, not on the podcast. Have just been like, how the like. But look, it's difficult for materials to come in. It's very expensive, and now that's what you were saying before you knew this.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what about obviously the recession happened.
Yeah.
Right, we knocked a couple of 100,000 houses. They were built in places no one wanted to live.
Yeah,
and that's not just Ireland. All of Europe, all the world like the Western world are dealing with that. Like everyone's moving towards cities. Mm-hmm. Yes, we didn't have the money from 2008 to like 2012, 14, whenever we kind of started getting stuff back on the tracks. There was about maybe COVID was what 2020. Maybe there's like 2 or 3 years in between where things were possible, where there was some money and there was something, and then you go look through the government schemes and they're like, we had planned to build 2,000 houses and we got 0 done. Yeah. And then there's another scheme where they're like, no, now we're going to build another, and then 0 gets done. Yeah. And then another one, they're like, 14 got done. 14,000? Mm-hmm. No, 14 out of a planned 3,000. You're like, and then that lad is still like, that fucking housing minister is still getting paid by the government. Yeah. And you realise all of that and you're like, right. You couldn't have a dreamland where everything could be paid for and everything would be perfect, but they could fucking try just a little bit.
Well, who's going to build all these things, you know?
Everyone's the Irish lads looking for work, the builders looking for work.
Yeah, they're looking for work in places like Sydney, Vancouver.
Yeah. All the lads who are spending their time travelling to Denmark and to Sweden for 6 weeks at a time to work 6 days in a row and have half a day off on a Sunday. And then saving up all their money, obviously, they like that. They'd rather be here getting paid to build things that are affordable housing for.
We had a system, and then a couple of bad eggs,
fucking gobshites,
who wouldn't greed.
That's what it is.
It's always greed.
Yeah.
Gilmartin wouldn't just pay the fucking man. You know how much money he would have made building those houses?
He would have been.
He couldn't spare 5 million for a kickback for the boys.
Look into his accounts. That's what I want to see. Yeah. I want to see the history of his accounts.
Well, he's dead.
Yeah. Well, no, I still want to see it.
Dig him up.
Posthumously.
Dig up the bones.
He's not well.
Anyway, there you go. That's the Mahon Tribunal. That could have also been like a 20-part episode. There's so much stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's also that a lot of the developers who then... I mean, I don't know. A lot of the developers get fucked. Not fucked. There are a lot of developers get rightly caught out for not paying taxes, and then the country immediately has to turn around and be like, "We're going to need you to build some houses. We're going to need you to build a lot of houses," and that
you're going to have to pay taxes on the stuff we caught you for.
Yeah.
Not 100% of the taxes you were meant to pay, because we do need you to. Now, yes, we'll cover the lawyer fees for all of this in court. You do need to keep building.
It's like the sequel of every action movie where, like, the Navy SEALs team up with the Taliban and they're like, oh, we're not so different, you and I, Act 1 we're enemies and that's the whole plot, but then people like the villain so much they're like, just make the Terminator the good guy in the second one. I don't care how, just do a bit of mumbo movie magic, get him in there. We like Arnie, and I don't know, that's one of the many issues, but that's the end of the Mahon Tribunal. It'll dovetail now into Bertie's last stint as Taoiseach, and then we'll be done and we'll do something else.
We'll do history, not just modern history.
No, not that either. Do you know the one that I've got lined up? Once this is all done, the first episode I'm doing about is just about a video game.
Oh no,
2018. Yeah. But any thoughts about the Mahon Tribunal? I mean, people it's the same with the bankers stuff, where like people say it went on for a long time, we didn't get anything out of it. Like, it did cost money, it wasn't for nothing.
Yeah, and it's not...
We mightn't have gotten enough out of it, but we did get something.
People get annoyed when you say things like, oh, it's not that much money. Like if they were to spend 10 million a year to make sure that the politicians were being honest, that's not that much money.
Yeah, and there's loads of other smaller figures who also got fined and tax rebates.
Yeah, like 9 million and 8 million.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the end of that. We're on the home stretch now. Go to the live shows. We've got one in Dublin coming up soon and one in Cork.
Yeah, and we've got Galway, we've got Limerick.
Galway,
we can do
Limerick,
them all.
Dundalk.
All around. We're down in Carlow for the Arts Festival.
Oh, shit, yes.
Go buy tickets to everything. Multiple. Shafter.
Anyway, good luck.